everybody, and welcome back to Co-Immunity Chronic Ills. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we are talking with Hannah about kind of all things chronic illness and, trying to manage a career and chronic illness. So Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. My name's Hannah Olson, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of an organization called Chronically Capable. And we are a talent marketplace and community connecting individuals living with chronic illnesses and disabilities to inclusive employment opportunities. Wow, that was a mouthful. But I actually started this business after my own experience having navigated the workplace while living with a chronic condition. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease in college, had a really bad case of it to the point where I had a PICC line placed in my arm just weeks after my college graduation. And as you can imagine, that's hard to balance with anything in life, but especially with a full-time job. And I just saw firsthand how hard it was to disclose this PICC line and illness to my employers, and to also be able to navigate the employment space while living with a chronic condition. And so I learned I wasn't alone, which was very sad, but also in a way very comforting. And
Sure.
I luckily ended up at a startup that was very inclusive, with a boss who went out of his way to make sure that I was feeling okay, that my PICC line was set up right in the office. And, it was that experience that really made me feel that everyone deserves this, and everyone deserves to have a boss like Kai. And Kai is actually now my co-founder, so my former boss. And the two of us have been in this space for a few years now, and growing a lot. Our team's growing, and just really excited to be able to give back to a community that I resonate with, and just getting to support. So really excited to be here and happy to chat all things chronic illness and work.
So I came across Chronically Capable when looking, for resources for people. And when I found you, I was like, this exists. This is the coolest thing ever. We host support groups, and a lot of our members are, college and just out of college, and chronic illness and trying to find work that is accommodating is such a big topic that we tackle, because from accommodation and whether or not they will give you time off, or let you have a certain setup. Like, for example, I couldn't, when I worked in healthcare, they put me at a desk facing a wall, where I was in this little corner. Well, I have narcolepsy. I'm like, I will fall asleep. I have to be around people in order to stay engaged. And, that disclosure process, whether or not you disclose, like we had a patient with a hearing impairment, and she's like, if I disclose, then I'm given less responsibility because people think that, I can't take this on, but also, like, I need people to repeat things sometimes, and I need certain accommodations. Point being, like, I think we both definitely recognize the necessity of accessible employment, and just what you're doing is incredible. So we're so grateful for you tackling this problem. So tell us a little bit about kind of Chronically Capable and the platform itself, and how it helps people find jobs that are open to chronic illness and accessibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first set out to tackle this problem, we had done several hundred interviews with folks from the community with various chronic illnesses, disabilities, both apparent and non-apparent. And from our understanding from these interviews, and our key takeaway was that the biggest piece was finding employers who got it. For lack of better words, and to be able to know, right? And you go on sites like Indeed and LinkedIn, which are amazing, and they are pumping out job opportunities, and it's like a candy store. It's great, but you're not able to really filter jobs based on your needs. And so initially, we set out to build our talent marketplace, which launched at the beginning of the pandemic back in late February, early March 2020. Ironic timing. Yep. We had no idea what was coming for us, but for us, we set out and built the talent marketplace, which enables job seekers to filter jobs based not only on their skill sets or their location, but also on their accommodation preferences. So to give this a concrete example of this, if I was someone with anxiety and I need to work remotely due to my anxiety, I'd be able, and I work in marketing, I'd be able to filter jobs that are all remote, that are for marketing. And we know that all of these employers are vetted, and these aren't, you're not just going into any company. We actually don't accept all companies that reach out to us. That's something that a lot of people don't know, but we do get a lot of inquiries, and we quickly go through a process where we say goodbye to the ones who are not truly inclusive. And we find that out very early on in our conversations, whether that be they're just coming for metrics, vanity, or there's some backlash that they're trying to push back. So these are all vetted employers, and we work not only to help the job seekers, but really half of our job, and I'd say actually 75% of our job currently, is working with the employers to break down inclusion. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in this space. So what people don't know when they come on our site as a job seeker is that we're doing all day. We're doing lunch and learn sessions. We are doing consulting with these organizations, and really trying to make sure that everyone in the company is on the same page. And it's not just living as a talent acquisition or an HR function, that everyone knows how to be an ally, how to understand the various disabilities, understanding accessibility. But yeah, we're kind of in the early stages. We consider what we have out right now phase one. We do have some exciting stuff to come later this year, so definitely stay tuned for that as well. And I think, our next stage is to really close the loop on this inclusion piece.
That's awesome. Well, and obviously there's a lot of talk about inclusion and diversity and advocacy, and so many movements have made so much progress. And we talked about this in a podcast episode earlier. We are finally starting to get some momentum in kind of the disability space, and raising awareness to the discrimination that is happening and does happen, and educating people. Because it's like, for example, employers or coworkers, they don't even realize that there is a problem, and so what you're doing with employers is so necessary. How do you kind of find culture to play a part in all of this?
Yeah, well, first off, just to comment on something you just said, I think that's actually a dinner table conversation I had last night. Was just around like, when is the time? We've had the women's rights, we've had all of these movements happening, and people, it shakes up the workplace, and suddenly there's all these efforts moving towards this way. The ADA has been around for 30 years, and there still hasn't been this huge backlash where people are standing up and companies and everyone's talking about it. That hasn't happened yet. And so this was my dinner table conversation, which obviously got to kind of leave work at my desk. But I think we are in a trending movement towards this really popping off, because the COVID-19 pandemic really pushed employers to start to think about inclusion more, and start to realize that, if we're making accommodations for someone with COVID, or for just any of our employees in general, we must start to think about this and prioritize inclusion. So I think we're on the right path. I think we haven't even hit it yet. We've just scratched the surface. And so,
and it's going to take people like us to start, like, even though it sucks, like, and we're tired, we have to, as a community, step up and play the role in, be those advocates. And raise the awareness, because I don't think anyone on the outside is going to do it for us, sadly.
Agreed. Sorry, there's a plane flying over me right now. Agreed. And to your question about culture, I think culture is a huge piece here, and not every company has built that culture yet. And what's interesting is that you mentioned this as well, it's like people aren't thinking and realizing how many people have illnesses and disabilities. When we talk about this, we're actually talking about most people. Most people are covered under the ADA. We're not thinking about COVID-19 long haulers, pregnant women, people with mental illness. These are things that these people don't even identify as disabled often, even though they are, and they are covered under the ADA. And so, to create a culture that's inclusive, this has to start from the top down, and it has to start with leadership standing up and being open. I think one of the things I really struggled with as a job seeker back in the day was I never saw people on LinkedIn. I never saw a CEO or a chief marketing officer or anyone standing up and saying, I have a disability or I have ADHD. And that to me was like, well, how am I ever going to have a career and how am I ever going to work at a company and move up the ladder if no one else in senior leadership is the same as me?
Right.
And so if we don't start to have that representation from the top down, or just that vocal representation where people are speaking out about it, we're not going to start to change culture. And so I think a big piece of culture here is having a place where people feel open to share, feel open to disclose, and know that when they do so, it's not going to harm their employment, but otherwise benefit them. And so some of the things that we talk about a lot with our companies is ERGs. That's a really hot topic right now. It's employee resource groups. They have them for women, they have them for military veterans, LGBTQ. Not a lot of companies have them for people with disabilities. They were now, I'd say 3 out of the 10 companies, 2 out of the 10 companies I talk to have a disabilities ERG. But when we think about how many people have disabilities, it's most people in the United States. I think we're talking 60% with a chronic illness, 30% with a disability, 40% with 2 or more chronic illnesses. So we need to start building cultures where we're building community and spaces, which is why I love what your organization is doing as well, of creating community. But that community also needs to live within these companies, or people aren't going to ever feel that it's an inclusive culture.
Yeah, and I guess going to the ADA and like, what kind of legal protections like are in the place that, for the workplaces that could benefit people with chronic illness?
And do they work?
Yeah, I guess what have you seen?
Yeah. So, well, first off, I just want to make a disclaimer that I'm not an attorney. And I have to make that when I speak about the ADA.
Yeah.
And so basically, like, anything I say is just intended to provide general education. And so this is not legal advice. So definitely consult with your own legal counsel. If you have any questions, I just want to make that as a disclaimer. But the ADA, we just passed our 31st anniversary. It was passed back in 1990, before I was born, just shortly before. But under the ADA, it really, the reason that this came about was to protect people from discrimination on the basis of their disability, and it protects anyone who may have a current or a previous impairment that can limit a certain part of their major life activities. And so under the ADA, we are able to get reasonable accommodations. The word reasonable is very confusing to a lot of people because what is deemed reasonable? And so the ADA, though, one of the things that this protects you from is from discrimination, whether that be pay, whether that be promotions, whether that be access to resources, public shaming, these types of things. But it also gives you the right to disclose and ask for accommodations at any point in your employment. So if you feel comfortable disclosing at the beginning when you're going through the interview process, great. You are protected that once you say that you have a disability. It starts something called the interactive process under the ADA, and the employer has to respond to these requests, whether they say no, offer an alternative, say yes, they have to respond. And that process is known as the interactive process. And so you could also disclose 3 years into a job. Say you are now suddenly a COVID long hauler and you need to work remotely because you are still very sick from COVID. You're protected under the ADA and you can disclose that, and you have the right to disclose and ask for accommodations. So that can happen at any point in your employment. The ADA is super complex and it covers more things than just employment, but it's something, we're seeing a huge rise in lawsuits filed in the EEOC last year. Disability related lawsuits were the second highest cases filed in the EEOC. I'm talking tens of thousands of lawsuits related to disability discrimination at work. And so this is a space where, employers are freaking out, and job seekers more than ever are starting to feel empowered to speak up and fight back for their rights. But we don't have that much education about the ADA, and it's something that, we're working to make sure that people know.
One, I have a service dog, and one of the reasons I quit a job was because of the interview process about whether or not it was a reasonable accommodation. You know, that reasonable part is I feel like an opportunity for discrimination in some cases. And, you know, so many people are afraid to disclose. And when discrimination does happen, you know, the problem with chronic illness, and I think why there's some delay in us, you know, fighting back and getting our movement going, is that we're so tired. Like, we are chronically ill. And so, you know, it's so encouraging that people are filing lawsuits, because I've had so many conversations with people that are like, well, this was blatant discrimination. I have a case, but I physically, for my own health, cannot do anything about it because I will end up getting sicker. Like, they just don't have the energy to fight. And I think that, you know, is one of the things we really have to combat. And you know, COVID has been so terrible, but it has given some silver linings, especially I feel like for the chronic illness community. You know, when a whole entire company can go remote, there's no reason that a few employees can't go remote for an accommodation.
And I think it's also a big thing of people are scared of losing their jobs. I mean, especially in chronic illness, having that healthcare insurance and benefits are very important. And, you know, if you lose those and, you know, not able to find another job or something, you know what I'm saying, for even a short period of time can, I feel like, can be very detrimental, not being able to, you know, afford some of the very expensive healthcare bills that could come up at any point with chronic illness.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a fear that we see a lot in our community, but you know, that's what the ADA exists for, because if you can do the job, it is unlawful for your employer to refuse to hire you, promote you, fire you, demote you, harass you, or pay you less because you have a disability. And so, but you're right. And I think it's a super interesting point that a lot of us are tired, and that's a factor. But I think another huge factor is that most disabilities are invisible. And
Yes.
so because of the invisibility factor, people feel that they're not going to believe me. And an employer does have the right, if your disability is not apparent, to ask for verification from your medical provider. If it is apparent, they don't have to do that. So if you are in a wheelchair, they have to provide reasonable accommodation. But I think there's still this fear that because it's invisible, are they going to believe me? Because you can't see this, how do you know it's real?
Well, and you've
And I
been
think-
gaslit by providers and peers, and that gaslighting plays such a part in that too, because invisible diseases come with its own set of problems.
Right. Agreed.
So something, you know, I've seen you talk about in other articles and things like that is the concept of when you were, you know, diagnosed and getting treatment and in the workplace for the first time, having that feeling of you being mentally capable of doing work, but your body needing that help. And when I was diagnosed with narcolepsy, I faced a lot of that and so much frustration. Like, if my body would just cooperate, then I would be able to access kind of my full potential. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and it's one of the reasons why we named our company Chronically Capable, because we are capable. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, I struggled a lot with the fact that mentally I was completely intact, and I was doing really well at my job. I was managing like 6 clients. I was doing a lot for a 21-year-old. However, I had a PICC line, and I had to be hooked up to IV antibiotics on a pole for 8 hours a day. And I had a boss that didn't allow that and didn't accept this in the office. And so for me, it was more this like, hey, I can do the work. All I need is to have a PICC line at my desk. And why is that wrong? And so what that did is that fired me up to start this and to make workplaces understand that we are capable. But I think that that's why accommodations exist. And that's why, you know, we're trying to do our best and can't say too much, but to work on making sure that this doesn't happen, because a lot of us have the mental capacity to participate and to do well if we are given the right accommodations. That's what accommodations are. They're productivity enhancers. They allow you to do your best work. In a lot of other countries, they actually call them productivity enhancers because they allow you to do your best work. They're not cutting you slack or giving you a free pass to do something. They exist so that you can be able to contribute equally as your colleagues may be able to. And so I think that's why there's a lot of work on the accommodation space that we're hoping to do.
What do you recommend for people that have a chronic illness, invisible or visible, when they go about finding a job?
Yeah, so I think this is a long loaded question, so I'll try to keep it short. I think one thing is first off is knowing your rights, and that's something we touched on briefly with the ADA, but I encourage you to check out the Job Accommodation Network, read the ADA, get yourself educated on what your rights are. I think that was a super empowering thing for me to just know that I actually have legal protections here. And so first off is like knowing your rights, and then I think a good thing is to do a self-assessment. A lot of us bring really unique traits and skills and qualities to the workforce that those without disabilities or chronic illnesses may not have. Things like time management, resilience, empathy, communication skills, things we've had to gain, skills we've gained through communicating with doctors, navigating all of the medical field on our own. It's a really challenging thing to have a chronic illness, and that's a skill we can use to our advantage in the workforce. So doing an inventory of what our strengths are, and then identifying a field that may be able to accommodate that for something like that. As someone with Lyme disease, I know that I don't have a PICC line anymore, but I get tired very easily, and I don't, a lot of travel on my body can be detrimental. And so I'm not going to do a field sales job. Right. Having to go door to door and not going to be like, it just doesn't work for me. So identifying a career path that's in line with your health needs, a lot of resources out there that exist. And then I think it's about when you go through and actually apply for jobs, hopefully you'll come join us on Chronically Capable. We've got tons, and we've got 2 big job fairs coming up and lots of jobs right now. So come join us. But once you do go through the application process, the next big step is knowing how to disclose and ask for accommodations. Currently, there's no right way or wrong way to do this. It's kind of up to us. However, we're working on that. But one of the things that we talk about a lot is disclosure. And it's a question we get constantly is great, I got a job, got hired, but I didn't tell them I have anxiety or depression or I'm pregnant. How do I now tell them and ask for accommodations? And I think, again, it's important to note that you can do this at any point in your process and in your employment, whenever you feel most comfortable. The rule of thumb is to do this before, if you need an accommodation or you need to disclose something, to do it before it affects your work or affects your mental state. So you obviously don't want to get into a place where you're pushing and you haven't shared and you haven't gotten that standing desk, even though you've got serious back pain. And then suddenly it hurts your body. That's not good. And so the rule of thumb is to do it before it actually affects you or has a negative impact. Going through that process is different at every company currently. But really the idea is to focus on what you need and less on your illness. No one needs to know what your underlying condition is. They need to know that I'm Hannah and I need X in order to do Y. There's a wonderful person that I follow a lot on LinkedIn and online named Sherry Byrne-Haber. And she talks a lot about this concept of how do you disclose and ask for accommodations, and the idea of reframing it around I need X to do Y in order to do Z. And it's like this idea of accommodations are tools and resources to support us in getting to the end goal, which is doing our job. And so focusing less on your abilities, or sorry, what your disability may be, and more so on what you need to be supported.
Sure.
That was long-winded, sorry.
No, I loved it. It was perfect.
It was very.
So your website talks about this. What are the benefits to employers for hiring people with disabilities or that need accommodations? we talked a little bit earlier about kind of the benefits of our illness with our skill set, but kind of go into that a little bit more.
Well, that's a big thing. I think,
do you like how I just slam you with like these big things?
Well, they could just all be like podcast episodes on their own. So, half of my job is speaking to employers and explaining the benefits of disability inclusion at work. It's like really why we exist, because a lot of them don't know. Like we just talked about, a lot don't even understand why this needs to be something that we're thinking about. And I think, first off, and today we're living in one of the tightest labor markets of all time. There's just been this huge shift in our workplace where employees are holding the power. People are quitting. November was like the highest month of all time where people left their jobs. And that's because they're prioritizing work-life balance, they're prioritizing flexibility, and they're prioritizing companies who offer inclusion and remote work. I've got some like really interesting stats on that, but I don't know them off the top of my head. But I think, when we talk about this, we're saying to companies, like, if you're trying to get highly qualified talent, you're overlooking an untapped pool, and that's the chronic illness and disability community. There's been some awesome studies about companies that are fostering disability inclusion. They are proven across the board to have financial and cultural benefits. This includes higher revenue. It's the report from Disability Inclusion Advantage says that companies who prioritize inclusion, they see 28% higher revenue, 2 times net income, and they see 90% higher retention rates and 72% an increase in our employee productivity. So the companies who are doing this, they're seeing these great results. And so we need to look to the leaders who are winning and use them as examples and say, hey, these people not only bring these core financial and cultural benefits, but also we are still talking about most people. So whether you know it or not, and whether you've got 2% of people in your workforce that said they have a disability, odds are it's about 50 to 60%. And so we actually have to optimize to support even not only recruiting new employees, but also our current employees. And so, that was a rant, but
no, we talk in rants all day long. Extremely neurodivergent. So how do people on your platform as a job seeker, kind of what's the process there?
Yeah, so it's super simple to sign up. Our website's www.wearecapable.org. It's also www.capable.work, if that's easier. We've got a few URLs, but when you sign up as a job seeker, you can upload your resume, share your accommodation preferences, and then you're able to go right into our dashboard. Our dashboard is being enhanced all the time, but you're able to really filter those jobs and click to apply. When you click to apply to a company, you're able to apply directly through their site, and they just get a notification that someone's applied, that they came from Chronically Capable. They don't know your name. And the idea is that then you can also access a ton of resources. So we've got a resource portal, and we have a similar functionality to LinkedIn in that our job seekers actually are able to interact with one another. So our approach was community first and create a space where people feel comfortable with talking. And so we have an online community called Club Capable. Our platform is free, by the way, for all job seekers always. We don't charge for anything. And on Club Capable, you can connect with others that have like-minded professionals, shared experiences. They've actually created their own micro groups. And so this may be interesting to you, but some folks in our community created a micro group called Chronically Sleepy. And there's all folks who have narcolepsy.
I love that.
So y'all should check it out. But they have created these micro groups where they can connect. We've got mentorship opportunities, job fairs, events. And yeah, that's kind of how it works. It's super simple. Join our community. We've got a newsletter that goes out quite frequently, always keeping up to date on the latest events and happenings.
Awesome.
But the big thing is we've got so many job seekers, but we have so many jobs coming in every day. So if you are out there looking for a job, please come and please apply. Our employers want you.
And so we recommend you guys a lot to our support group members. Because so many of them are like, I can't find a job that is accessible. What kind of jobs do you have on the platform?
Yeah, so when we started out, we launched at the beginning of the pandemic. So most of our jobs were remote. However, as certain industries do have to go back to in-person, things like factories and warehouses, stores, these types of things, we do have a mix. So there are some in-person roles, but the majority, say 95% are fully remote. And you can filter that. But in terms of types of jobs, and just backtrack one step as well. We do have full-time, part-time, and contract, as well as some internships. We're really working on getting more part-time and contract roles onto the site. It's a huge need from our community, and we're doing everything we can to get more of these opportunities. It's just hard to find in part-time work. So we're working on that. But in terms of industries, it's really a range. Most are in the professional services, things like sales, marketing, communications. And we have a huge need for tech, as every single platform has right now. It's a lot of tech jobs. And yeah, it's there's the whole gamut. I think we didn't want to build a platform that just focused on one specific job type. And we didn't want to just go and, we started off, we thought, oh, we need to have like Facebook on here, and we need to have Microsoft and all these big names. But in reality, not all of our job seekers want to go work corporate. Some want to work for small businesses. Some want to work part-time and work for a little startup. And so we kept it a range, and we have anywhere from the Levi Strausses of the world and Hearst and those types of jobs, all the way down to small 4-person teams. And so we try to keep it really a range, because we are probably the most diverse community that exists out there. We transcend all diversity groups with chronic illness.
And I guess, like location wise, do you guys have jobs ranging the whole country? Are you guys in only certain region for in-person jobs at least? I guess.
Yeah, so our team is based in the United States. We're based in Austin, Texas. We do have jobs all over the country. We have job seekers actually in all 50 states, in 152 countries worldwide now. Our employers are all US based. However, we do have external roles. So we do have opportunities in Canada. We have some in Europe. We've got some in India right now. So it does change, especially with these larger corporate companies. They have external offices. And so we do keep the floodgates open, because we don't want to be just US based. So yeah, if you're out of the States, come join us as well.
All right, so this is our segment we like to call
Just the tips,
because we're 5 years old. So in closing, what are your 5 tips for finding the right job for your needs? There you go. That's the last thing. What are your tips?
I should have thought about this before.
We wing everything.
yeah.
We don't wing everything. We don't wing everything.
Tip number 1, recognize and celebrate your strengths. I think we all forget that we all have gained these skills. I mentioned this earlier. Things I'm in my mid-20s, and the skills and experiences I've gained through battling an illness for years, I am wise beyond my years. And I know that most people my age probably aren't as motivated and driven. And I think a lot of it is due to this battle I've had. So know your strengths and be proud of them and harness those. That'd be the first one, because chronic illness has taken a lot from us, but it's also given us some things. And so remember those. Number 2 is definitely going to be back to know your rights. I wish I had educated myself earlier on this, and I wish I knew years ago that I could have sued that terrible company for not letting me have a PICC line. And I wish I knew and felt empowered by the law. So learn it, study it. It's all over the internet. So tip number 3 is pay attention when you're applying to jobs, to the company's policies, to their benefits, to their health insurance plans. Do their benefits cover your medication and your current doctors? Do they have mental health care? Many people with chronic illness experience mental health issues. And so do they have mental health benefits? Do they have things like unlimited sick days? Pay close attention to that. A lot of people are like, great, I got a job. Great, I told them, but do their benefits align with your current needs? Sure. So definitely pay attention to that. Tip number, am I at 4?
Yeah.
Find community, whether that be within your workplace or externally. There's so many companies out there, communities, community is one, Chronically Capable is another, diverse ability. Find community, and if your company doesn't have an ERG, there are places like Club Capable where you can actually interact with others who are in similar spaces. It can be very, very isolating to live with a chronic illness, especially at work, and especially if it's invisible. So find community and know that you're not alone. And tip number 5, I'd say don't give up. I wish someone told me that a while ago, that it could be really, really exhausting and defeating to go through this, and having to disclose and having to talk about your SHIT over and
Oh,
over
we
again.
love cuss words.
Okay, having to talk about your shit all the time, like, it's not fun, and it's not, like this it's not fun living with an illness, and I'm not going to sit here and glorify it, but don't lose hope. We are here for a reason, and there are jobs out there. There are companies. I'm working with them every single day. And now more than ever, they're starting to really understand our strength and the opportunity that we bring to the workforce. And so don't lose hope, and come join us at Chronically Capable. And yeah, those are my tips.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad that you were able to come and chat with us. You're definitely an amazing resource for the chronic illness community.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really
Thank you
enjoyed
so
having you
much.
on.
Thanks for having me. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.